what's up, knitters? This is Jana from Purl Together. Welcome to part 1 of our Cozy Winter Shawl Knit Along. So I'm pretty excited about this shawl. I'm knitting this one for a fundraiser auction, but I'm very likely going to knit another one for myself because I'm really enjoying this pattern. As I mentioned in the introductory video, I am choosing to do an I-cord cast on. I'm going to start with an I-cord tab, then I'm going to add I-cord edging down both sides as we go, and I will clearly show you how I do that. Certainly is not required. If you want to omit those first 3 stitches and the last 3 stitches that I'm adding and just knit it as written on the pattern, then absolutely do that. So that would become clearer as we go along. You'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. Okay, before we dive in, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to several of our patrons. These are people that support Purl Together financially by pledging a small amount each month to keep this channel going and keep these videos coming to you each and every week. So a heartfelt thank you to Amy Miller, Lynn Timmer, Beth Love, Laurel Young, and Mary Conziola. Thank you so much for your ongoing support of Purl Together. A few things I want to make you aware of right away as you get started is there are written instructions as well as the charted instructions, so that's handy depending on your preference. The other thing I wanted to make you aware of, which kind of threw me off a little bit at first, and granted I was not paying attention as well as I probably should have been, but you know, I get in the habit of reading the chart the same way all the time, thinking that the first column or the first number 1 down at the bottom right hand corner is the first stitch on my needle. That is not necessarily the case. What she has charted here is simply what needs to be charted. So if you'll notice right on page 2, it clearly says row 1 right side, row 2 wrong side, and it clearly says there are a couple 2-3 stitches that you knit before you begin the chart. So I just messed myself up in that way, and I thought I'd let you know about that so you don't make the same mistake that I did. But you know, probably you're going to be paying attention better than me. So just make sure to be mindful of that as you begin section 1, that there are a few stitches that you knit before you start the chart. Okay. The only other thing that you want to be aware of is those left and right cross cables. Make sure that you're paying attention to which way they go, leaning to the left or crossing over to the right, either way. And then in the middle, the big cables, make sure that you're aware of how many stitches are involved in those larger cables. Like, don't just assume that it's a giant cable, it's going to be 8 or it's going to be 10. You want to actually double check that. Okay, and then I think everything else is pretty straight up standard, like you know that what yarn overs and decreases look like. So, all right, let's get into it. All right, I've cast on 3 stitches using the long tail cast on method, and I'm going to create an I-cord tab. And then I'm just going to knit 4 rows. So when we knit an I-cord, you're just going to knit straight across like you normally would, and when you get to the last stitch, you're going to slip everything back over again, tip to tip, meaning not twisting anything. The tips of your needles are here. You're just taking that stitch straight across. Now my working yarn is coming from the stitch that's on the left side, but we're going to pull that across and tighten it. And an I-cord is simply a tube. And when there's so few stitches, any extra slack that's coming across the back will even out. You'll see. So I give it a little tug just so that you can see that. And then we're going to do this 4 times. So we're going to make 4 rows of I-cord. All right, now you can see I have 4 rows and I've made this little knitted tube. Now what I'm going to do is pick up and knit 3 along the edge. So just like when we're picking up a heel flap or the stitches along a heel flap, we're going to pick up and knit 3 stitches along this top edge. So I'm simply going to take it helps to have pointy needles to do this. So I'm just going to go in under that stitch right there, and I'm going to knit into that. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. Okay, now what I'm going to do is knit 3 from my cast on edge. So because I did use a slip knot, it looks a little funky, but I'm going to create 3 stitches by picking up some edges right here on my cast on edge. So you can use a crochet hook if that's easier for you, if it feels a little less cumbersome. You could certainly use a crochet hook to go in there, but I'm thankful for my pointy needles, and I'm just gonna go in right there, and there's 1, and I'll pick 2 more places to do that on my cast on edge. And now this means I'm going to end up with 9 stitches on my right hand needle to begin knitting my shawl with. Okay, we've completed the I-cord tab and we're ready to begin the pattern. Now the first 3 stitches will be the right edge, the last 3 stitches will be the left edge, and these 3 stitches in the middle will be where the pattern begins. But we have completed the I-cord and we've ended on the wrong side. So now the right side's facing us, but the pattern wants you to cast on 3 stitches. So we really need to get back to the right side so that we can start row 1. So right now we're going to go ahead and knit our I-cord edging and then pretend that those middle 3 stitches are where we're going to cast on, because that's where we're at in the pattern, is the very beginning. So I've done the tab ahead of time, and then this would be simulating the cast on row. So if we're on the wrong side and we know that all these purl bumps are facing us, to do the edging on the wrong side row, slip the first one as if to purl. Got my yarn tangled up a little bit there. Slip the first as if to purl with yarn in front, and then take your yarn through the needles to the back, knit the next stitch, bring the yarn back to the front and slip as if to purl. Now we're just going to go ahead and purl across the center 3 stitches, which is the equivalent of knitting on the front side, and that would be simulating our cast on row. Now we're going to do the same thing with our last 3 stitches. Slip this one as if to purl, take your yarn to the back and knit the middle one, and then with yarn in front slip the last. Okay, now we're ready to actually begin row 1 of the pattern. So that would have been your cast on row if you're not doing the I-cord tab along with me. If you're not doing the I-cord tab, then this is where you would have just simply done your long tail or your cast on of choice and cast on these first 3 stitches. So now we're beginning section 1. Look on page 7 if you prefer the written instructions, or on the chart, keeping in mind the right side and the wrong side in your chart reading skills. Okay, so now we're on the right side. So of our I-cord edging, we knit the first one, bring the yarn forward, slip the next as if to purl, take your yarn back and knit the next. So that takes care of the I-cord edging. Don't worry about that purl bump. It will go away. It will disappear. You'll see. Now we'll follow the pattern as written for row 1. We'll place our marker and do our first increase as per the pattern. Okay. Now on the left side with the edging, you're going to knit the first one, bring your yarn to the front, slip as if to purl, take your yarn to the back and knit the last. And those purl bumps will disappear. Trust me, you'll see. Okay, now continue on with your chart, maintaining your edging, which I'll show you a couple of more times, how you do the edging as you go. Your chart and your stitch counts will just be simply taking these 3 stitches off. So if your chart and your pattern is going to contain the stitches in the middle minus the first 3 and the last 3. Okay, so again on the wrong side row, when the purl bumps are toward you, you're going to slip as if to purl, knit the one in the middle, slip as if to purl with yarn in front, and now follow your chart for row 2. After I've followed the pattern for row 2, I'm going to do the last 3 stitches of my I-cord edging, slip the first one as if to purl with the yarn in front, knit the center one and slip the last with yarn in front as if to purl, and turn your work. And now you're just going to continue on in this way, and I'll put notes down below so that you remember what you do for the right side and the wrong side for your edging. And we're just going to carry on keeping in pattern for the center stitches minus your edging stitches. Okay, as always, if you have any questions, definitely let me know down below. Okay, I've knitted row 3 and now I'm on the right side. The right side is facing me, so I'm going to knit, bring the yarn to the front, slip as if to purl, take the yarn to the back and knit the last. And then do you see when we straighten that out, that purl bump disappears, doesn't it? That goes to the center of the I-cord. So that's pretty handy, pretty nifty little trick there. Okay, now I'm going to move on and carry on with either the written instructions or the chart, whatever, of section A, whatever you prefer. I'm just pausing here to show you I've done the first 14 rows of chart A, and this is looking pretty good. I like the I-cord edging on the side. And, you know, I think for a larger, kind of chunkier shawl, it proportionally matches pretty well. So when you're following the chart or the written instructions, you know, just disregard these first 3 and the last 3. You can plainly see that now. And then the chart and the written instructions is what's going on in the center here. So let me show you a couple of the cable crosses and then you can carry on with chart A. All right, we've come to the point in the pattern of chart A where we're going to do the first left cross. So if you choose not to use a cable needle, that's fine. I do have a video on cabling without a cable needle. So do whatever works for you. But this is just a 3/3 left cross. So we're just taking these 3 stitches and traveling them to the left, making sure that when you're going to start knitting that your yarn is in the back. And then we're just doing our 3/3 cable. So that's really simple. You just pull those to the front, and the instructions for this they're specifically written out on page 10 of the pattern. But I'm just demonstrating this real quick where we just slip those 3 to the cable needle, hold them in the front, knit the next 3, and then knit these 3 from the cable needle. If you're interested in learning to do cables without a cable needle, I'll put a link down below for a whole separate video more in depth on how you can accomplish that if you like. All right, I'm at the point in chart A where we are going to begin that lace panel section in addition to the cable. So go ahead and perform the left cross 3x3 cable. This time I'm going to do it without a cable needle by just going in from behind, making sure I don't catch any of those first 3 stitches. And I'm going to work in my right hand needle underneath those 3 that are on the left and then slip everything off. Work my left needle around to the front and pull those over. Again, if you want a slowed down version of how to cable without a cable needle, I have linked that video down below. Then I'm just going to knit everything off. Then we're going to begin the lace portion, and that's really straightforward. It's just a left leaning decrease and a yarn over that are paired together so that you maintain the original stitch count. So when we do a yarn over coming from a purl stitch, you're not going to wrap a second time. You're just going to lay it over like this, and then you're going to do your left leaning decrease, which is slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, or purl, depending on your preference. There's more than one way to do that. And then take your left needle going underneath and knit those 2 together. So you can see there's the yarn over right there. And then just continue following the rest of the chart or the written instructions as you choose. And then your last 3 stitches are your knitted I-cord edging. All right, this is starting to look really good. Okay, I'm now at the point in chart A where we're going to do some larger cables, which is a 4x4 left cross. And that just means we're going to take 4 stitches and hold them to the front, knit the next 4, and then knit those 4 off the cable needle. So pretty simple. Just make sure you're reading the key and reading the directions on the pattern carefully. You know, you can do this certainly without a cable needle. However, with larger cables, more than 3, usually I don't, because I certainly don't want to drop one. But certainly that's your choice. You're the boss of your knitting. You knew I was going to have to say that at least once during this tutorial. Okay, so there's my 4/4 going to the left. And then I believe we just have one more cable in chart A that I'll demonstrate before we finish that up. This is actually the beginning of what's going to become that braid rather than just a twist, like this first cable section is a twist. This is going to become a braid. So we'll finish up our I-cord edging, and you can see this is really starting to look awesome. Okay, and just a quick note, I discovered while I was going along on that last right side row that I wasn't coming out quite right with my stitch count after this first cable braid. So I realized I had forgotten to do a couple of those increases where you knit through the front and the back loop at the end of this row. So I did go back and correct that error in case anybody noticed that during the last section of video. Good on you if you were eagle-eyed and noticed that. All right, I'm wrapping up chart A, and the only other thing I was going to show you that is pretty self-explanatory is just that other cable cross that goes to the right. And it's a 4x4 to the right, so it's simply 4 stitches slipped to the cable needle and held to the back instead of the front, so that the next 4 stitches will cross over from left to right over the front of the others. And so that's what's going to create that appearance of, well, it's not just the appearance, it actually is a braid that we're creating with the stitches. So you just knit those next 4 and knit these off the cable needle from behind. Okay, so this is the end of chart A. I think it looks pretty great. I'm really pleased with how this is turning out with the I-cord edging on both sides. Okay, so I hope you'll enjoy this pattern as much as I have. Go ahead and knit through chart A and B. That should be enough to keep you going for a little while, especially if you're including any new skills like the cast on I-cord tab and the I-cord edging. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. We will continue this tutorial probably the second week in June. I have a vacation coming up, but I have some fun stuff pre-recorded for you in the meantime. We'll do the block of the month. Will come out the first week in June as always, and then I have a podcast episode for you next week. If you have any questions, be sure to join us in the Facebook group and the Ravelry group, and check us out over on Patreon. Thanks for watching.